So I have sub in one of my classes today for the very last end of class. So I thought I'd make a video to make sure that you still had me sitting here teaching you. So we're going to look at this, and all of you are going to have the advantage of getting to see it online and be able to go back to this and look over it. So if I start here, we've talked about how it's impossible to divide by 0. It's like, doesn't make sense. I've talked about how this is like me ordering a pizza just to throw it away. Like, why would I order the pizza? Okay, so here I have 5 over x equals 1. I know that this bottom piece cannot equal 0. So this is actually an easy one. X can't equal 0. So we're going to go through and we're going to solve this. And the way we do that is we multiply by the bottom. Okay, we're trying to clear that fraction. We're trying to multiply by the bottom, get that fraction gone. So if I do that, I'm going to multiply by x on both sides. That's a property of equality. I cross that x off, so I end up with 5 equals x. That's my answer. That's an okay answer because it doesn't clash with this answer right here that says x cannot equal 0. So I'm going to keep going. So one of the biggest mistakes that I get every single year is that kids tell me that x cannot equal 0. Okay, no. That's not how this works. We're looking at the bottom of the fraction. Okay, that whole bottom of the fraction cannot equal 0. So x minus 5 can't equal 0. Okay, so now we have to do a little more math to get what x can't equal. We have to do that properties of equality to both sides and get x cannot equal 5. Okay. But now I have to go through and solve the problem. So like I haven't even touched my problem yet. I'm just talking about like what it can't be. So here if I rewrite this, I get 1 over x minus 5 equals 3. In order to get rid of the fraction, I'm going to multiply by x minus 5 on both sides. Okay. So here, this cancels. Oops. This cancels. And I get 1 equals 3x minus 5. Now I get to go ahead and distribute. I get 1 equals 3x minus 15. So now I get to go ahead and add to both sides. That's a property of equality because I'm doing it to both sides. So I'm going to add 15 to both sides. And my work is now going to come up here. So I get 16 equals 3x. Okay. So now I'm going to divide by 3. Here this cancels. And I'm left with a fraction as an answer, and that's okay. Some of you like to go and change that to a decimal. You're more than welcome to. I don't have a calculator on me right now. I'm not going to change it. Okay. So number 10. So again, big mistake. Do not make x not equal to 0. That's not the thing. The bottom of the fraction can't be equal to 0. So that whole x plus 1, that's the piece that can't equal 0. So if I subtract 1 from both sides, I get x is not equal to negative 1. So I'm going to put that there. I have to remember to go and check with that at the end. Okay, so that's something I didn't do over here, but I knew a fraction wasn't equal to that 5. So I have to make sure to go back and check. So here I have x plus 1 all over x plus 1 equals 4. I'm going to cheat or cheat. Okay? So normally I tell you to multiply by the bottom of the fraction, but I'm noticing that that is exactly the same both times. So I'm going to say that this is 1 equals 4. What do you think of that? So I'm looking at 1 equals 4, and I'm like, there's no solution. Okay? But just in case you were so in your groove and you actually went and multiplied, I'm going to go and do that for you. So if I multiply both sides by x plus 1, that cancels. I get this here in parentheses. Don't forget that 4 is going to have to go to both of those things. I get x plus 1 equals 4x plus 4 after distributing. I am going to subtract x from both sides. I'm going to subtract 4 from both sides. Here I get 3x equals 3. Negative. Okay. So I get to go ahead and I get to divide both sides by 3. And I get x equals negative 1. But the problem is that x is not allowed to equal negative 1. So if it has to equal negative 1 and it's not allowed to equal negative 1, there's no solution. There's nothing that can be done here, like you're lost. Okay? So again, no matter which way you slice it, we're getting to that no solution. Okay. So here I have 2 bottoms. Okay? So I have to make sure my first bottom doesn't equal 0. So this bottom can't equal 0, and that bottom can't equal 0. So now I get 2 things that can't equal 0. I get x can't equal 0. That one was easy. And I get x minus 4 can't equal 0. So now I got to do a little math. Got to add 4 to both sides. And I get x cannot equal 4. Okay, so it can't equal both of those things. Okay, so now that I've taken care of that, I can do some math. Okay. So, in a couple of classes, I've taught you how to multiply by like one thing, like the lowest common denominator. And in a couple of classes, we've taken it a bit more step by step. Okay, so because this is on the bottom and that's on the bottom, I can multiply by x and x minus 4 to clear both bottoms on both sides. That's going to be a lot for some of us. If you're there, that's awesome. But for some of us, we're not there. So I'm going to go through and I'm going to do it step by step. Okay? Also, some of you might learn cross multiplication. That's my favorite way. Okay? It's my favorite way, but right now I'm going to teach you in the slower, smaller steps. So, I'm trying to clear this fraction. I'm going to multiply by x. When I do that, this cancels, and I'm left with 2 equals 3x over x minus 4. Now, I need you to understand that this x and that x cannot cancel because the x is not by itself on the bottom. So it's not allowed. So now I have to multiply by this bottom. And I need to say x minus 4 multiplies to both sides. it cancels here. I get 3x equals, and I'm going to do my distributing now. 2x minus 8. Some of you may have needed to rewrite that before you distribute it. That's okay. So now I'm going to get all my x's on the same side by using properties of equality. I get negative 8 equals x. This is my answer, but I have to check with over here. So I'm good because negative 8 is not 0 and it's not 4. So I am in a good place. Okay. So here I have 3 over x plus 6 and 6 over x plus 6. That's negative. Okay. What's nice is that because these are the same thing, I could write x plus 6 doesn't equal 0 twice, and I could do that math twice, but I don't have to, okay? And mathematicians are lazy. We're not going to do things more times if we don't have to. Like, that's the whole reason why we use letters in math, is because they don't want to write the whole word out. So, I don't need to use that anymore. And I'm going to subtract 6 from both sides using properties of equality. And I'm going to get x cannot equal negative 6. So I'm going to make sure to check back with that at the end. The nice thing about this is that since they're the same, I only have to do that multiplication once. Again, some of you are going to use cross multiplication and you're going to love it. And that's fine. You're allowed to. So here I get 3 equals negative 6. That does not happen. It's not true. So this one is no solution.
Are you going to use these books?
So here's our last one like that. We've got the bottom is x plus 2. So we know the bottom, x plus 2, cannot equal 0. So then I subtract 2 from both sides. I get x cannot equal negative 2. So I'm going to put that negative 2 right there. I'm going to remember to check back with it. So now I'm looking to multiply both sides by x plus 2 because I want to get that fraction gone. Like, it's super scary when it has a variable in it, but a fraction in general we just don't like. So we're crossing this out. I get x minus 3 equals 0 times anything still makes 0. So I know that seems weird that the x plus 2 just goes away. It doesn't though. It, like, you multiplied it, you got a 0, and it's okay. So now I'm going to subtract 3 from both sides. I'm going to add 3 from both sides to get rid of that negative 3, sorry. And I get x equals 3. This checks with this, like it's okay, it's not negative 2. So we are all good. So this is called excluding values. So anytime we have something on the bottom, we're excluding it because it cannot equal 0. On Monday, about Tuesday, we're going to talk about the zero product property. Okay? Your outlook to that is that we know right now that x minus 3 equals 0. So we know that x has to equal 3. Okay? So we've done a bunch of these problems already. We did them up here. Okay? This time they're just setting it equal to 0 automatically. So up here, they've added something else in. They say, like, if you know that x times x minus 3 equals 0, what do you know? Like, now we're freaking out because we don't really want to have to distribute this. Like, that looks so scary. So I'm telling you that logic tells us, I'm quoting Hidden Figures, that logic tells us that if two things multiply together to get 0, then clearly one of the things has to be 0, or both of them. So we're just going to say that x has to equal 0 and that x minus 3 has to equal 0. Okay, we're going to write both of those things down, and we're going to say that either one of those things has to happen. So either x has to equal 0 or x has to equal 3. One of those things has to happen in order for that problem to be 0. Okay? So that's your sneak peek. And then you're going to go on and just do your homework for tonight, which is a bunch of those excluding value problems.